Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for showing up to hear about Bitcoin, which I think is, as Kristen suggested, something that a lot of people have heard about and not a lot of people have understood. It's actually helpful to get a sense, in this room, can you guys just raise your hand briefly? Give me a sense of how many people in here have ever owned a Bitcoin or any part of a Bitcoin? Okay, that's very helpful. I think that's not a bad representation of probably the broader population. How many people have actually decided to dive into this thing, which comes across is pretty scary for a lot of people. So hopefully I can illuminate that. My book is really an effort to tell the story of this technology. And I think hopefully I'll bring this home. I mean, this is the number of incredible personalities that have kind of driven the development of Bitcoin is pretty remarkable, the number of sort of movie-made moments. And I focused on the story because I think that, it's hard to get into this by talking about starting with the technology, which is some pretty complicated stuff. But when you understand the people and their motivations and why they threw themselves into this, I think it provides a way to understand it. So I'm going to focus mostly on the people, but I do want to just start because I think defining what is Bitcoin is an important place to begin. And I think that one of the reasons people have trouble with this technology is because it's actually many different things. And it's software that allows a lot of different types of financial transactions. Is it money? Is it a commodity? Is it a financial network? And so I think people don't always know where to begin with it. I like to start by thinking about it in the way that the people who were working on the projects that led into Bitcoin thought about it. Going back to the 90s, there were, and even the 80s, there was a group of privacy activists gathered roughly under the online community, the cypherpunks. These were privacy activists who essentially wanted to create digital cash. I mean, that was what gave the push to a lot of this. Digital cash in the physical world is this thing that that allows for direct transactions with somebody. You give somebody a $20, you don't need anybody else to facilitate that transaction. You give it to them, it's over, nobody knows the transaction happened. All those elements of physical cash did not make the jump into the digital world. Once money entered the digital world, you essentially always needed some middleman there to facilitate the transaction, to update the records on both sides. And so the privacy activists were worried about this because that middleman always had that window into your transactions. They knew who you were giving money to, where you were, when you spent the money. I mean, your credit card records are a pretty good record of your life, I think is what the privacy activists realized, and that's still the case. And so they were hoping to create digital cash that would make it harder for that sort of kind of big brother snooping. And so there were a lot of projects in the 90s, 2000s, trying to create digital cash. Most of them failed. And it was Bitcoin, which was originally introduced in 2008. The software was released in 2009. That kind of, I think for the first time, brought that idea into being, this digital cash notion. Now, I don't think that digital cash is necessarily the best way to think about Bitcoin now. I don't think that's its main function right now, but it's useful to realize that was what the folks involved in this project for many years were trying to create. Bitcoin itself, that software, I think the easiest way to think about it, in addition to cash, this digital token, you have a whole network that essentially allows for a sort of email for money. With email, as you guys know, the basis of it is your address and your password. Similarly, with Bitcoin, the kind of foundation of the whole system is your Bitcoin address, which this is one example of a Bitcoin address. This is actually one of my Bitcoin addresses. They're generally 34 digits long, letters and numbers. And it's roughly, you can think about it as an email address. You can use this address to send money, you can use it to receive money. And like email, you have a private key that is associated with each Bitcoin address. This is the private key that is actually associated with the Bitcoin address you just saw. Every address has its own private key, and you can think of this as an email password. And not surprisingly, you use the private key to unlock the address and send money. So that's the kind of building block of the Bitcoin system, and I think it's helpful to think about it sort of like email. Previously, if you wanted to send money, you needed to go to your bank, you needed to use some third-party service. There's no such thing as a sort of universal money account where you can send money to anybody else. There is, you have your routing number and your checking account number, which serves something like this, but that doesn't work internationally, and you're not always going to be able to transfer between banks. The idea with Bitcoin is that this address is a sort of universal address for money that allows money to be sent anywhere. So we're already diving into some of the complications, and I don't want to lose you this soon in it, but I think this is a helpful way just to start thinking about what it is. It was imagined as digital cash, and it's created this system that allows for a sort of email for money.